and narrow. Entering, you passed direct into a square-panelled hall, on the left of which was the dining room, which communicated with the passage leading to the kitchen and offices. On the right of the hall were two excellent sitting rooms, looking out, the one onto the gravel in front of the house, the other onto the garden. From the first of these, you could see, through the gap in the pines by which the road approached the house, the brick kiln of which I have already spoken. An oak staircase went up from the hall, and round it ran a gallery, onto which the three principal bedrooms opened. These were commensurate with the dining room and the two sitting rooms below. From this gallery there led a long, narrow passage, shut off from the rest of the house by a red baize door, which led to a couple more guest rooms and the servants' quarters. Jack Singleton and I share the same flat in town, and we'd sent down in the morning Franklin and his wife, two old and valued servants, to get things ready at Trevor Major, and procure help from the village to look after the house, and Mrs. Franklin, with her stout, comfortable face all wreathed in smiles, opened the door to us. She had had some previous experience of the comfortable quarters which go with fishing, and had come down prepared for the worst, but found it all of the best. The kitchen boiler was not furred. Hot and cold water was laid on in the most convenient fashion, and could be obtained from taps that neither stuck nor leaked. Her husband, it appeared, had gone into the village to buy a few necessities, and she brought up tea for us, and then went upstairs to the two rooms over the dining room and bigger sitting room, which we had chosen for our bedrooms, to unpack. The doors of these were exactly opposite one another, to right and left of the gallery, and Jack, who chose the bedroom above the sitting room, had thus a smaller room above the second sitting room, unoccupied next to his, and opening out from it. We had a couple of hours fishing before dinner, each of us catching 3 or 4 brace of trout, and came back in the dusk to the house. Franklin had returned from the village from his errand, reported that he had got a woman to come in to do housework in the mornings, and mentioned that our arrival had seemed to arouse a good deal of interest. The reason for this was obscure. He could only tell us that he was questioned 12 times as to whether we really intended to live in the house, and his assurance that we did produced silence and a shaking of heads. But the country folk of Sussex are notable for their silence and chronic attitude of disapproval, and we put this down to local idiosyncrasy. The evening was exquisitely warm, and after dinner we pulled out a couple of basket chairs onto the gravel by the front door and sat for an hour or so, while the night deepened in throbs of gathering darkness. The moon was not risen, and the ring of pines cut off much of the pale starlight, so that when we went in, allured by the shining of the lamp in the sitting room, it was curiously dark for a clear night in May. And at that moment of stepping from the darkness into the cheerfulness of the lighted house, I had a sudden sensation, to which, during the next fortnight, I became almost accustomed, of there being something unseen and unheard and dreadful near me. In spite of the warmth, I felt myself shiver, and concluded instantly that I had sat out of doors long enough, and without mentioning it to Jack, followed him into the smaller sitting room, in which we had scarcely yet set foot. It, like the hall, was oak-panelled, and in the panels hung some 6 of watercolour sketches, which we examined idly at first, and then with growing interest, for they were executed with extraordinary finish and delicacy, and each represented some aspect of the house or garden. Here you looked up the gap in the fir trees into a crimson sunset. Here the garden, trim and carefully tended, dozed beneath some languid summer noon. Here an angry wreath of storm cloud brooded over the meadow, where the trout stream ran grey and leaden below a threatening sky, while another, the most careful and arresting of all, was a study of the brick kiln. In this, alone of them all, was there a human figure. A man dressed in grey peered into the open door, from which issued a fierce red glow. The figure was painted with miniature-like elaboration. The face was in profile, and represented a youngish man, clean-shaven, with a long aquiline nose and singularly square chin. The sketch was long and narrow in shape,